Everyone has their own opinion, but
Okay,
at the end of the day,
call to order this Thursday, July 25th, Oregon City Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee meeting. Thank you all for attending this hot evening. It's 91 degrees out there right now.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, we'll start with introductions to my right.
Bill Daniels.
Troy Bollinger and Derek Kugel.
Chris Cook.
Lisa Novak.
Karen Mori.
Jeff Sargent. Phil Lewis. And we have Doug Neely is excused this evening, and Alicia Hammock is running just a couple minutes late.
Thank you. Agenda item number 3, approval of minutes. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the May 23rd meeting minutes? And do we have any comments?
I make a motion to approve.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. And all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Great.
Thank you. Agenda item number 4, citizen comments. Do we have any citizen comments for issues or items not on the agenda this evening? Thank you. And tonight we have no presentations.
We do not, and I do apologize. Last month we had to cancel. We had Rochelle was scheduled to come and speak a little bit about our summer events and activities, and obviously tonight she's at our Concert in the Park event and was unable to come and give a more thorough presentation, but I would like to invite obviously members of PRAC and any members of the community to attend any of our summer events, Concerts in the Park on Thursday evenings, running now through August 22nd. Movies in the Park beginning August 2nd and running through August 23rd. And then we're celebrating our 175th incorporation of the city of Oregon City. And we're hosting a 175th celebration commemoration event on August 24th, which is a Saturday. It'll be a full day of events starting at 10 in the morning, running through 9:15 in the evening. It'll end with a concert in the park, and then we'll have a laser light show in the evening hours. So like a real deal, large scale laser light show, which is really exciting. So invite all your friends and family out. Should be a good night.
Great. Is it at the end of the Oregon Trail?
It is, yes.
All right. General business, item 6.
So we're going to do a short presentation.
It's easier on your neck.
And for those of you that have, hopefully you can make the toggle on your dais to be able to flip to the presentation mode. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Mountain View Cemetery, the Parents of Murdered Children Memorial, and the Veterans Plaza Memorial. So Mountain View Cemetery is 56 total acres, one of the oldest cemeteries in the West, established, I would say, Karen says the oldest, and I'll go with her. It was established in 1854, and the first known burial was in 1847. We do about 100 or so, 110 burials per year, and keep very busy. So that's a couple burials each week that our crews get to perform. So the Mountain View Cemetery, again, just an overview of the cemetery property as a whole, the outline, and then we're going to talk about this little area right here at the entrance. So as you enter the cemetery, just to the left is the Veterans Memorial Plaza area and the Parents of Murdered Children Memorial. So it's kind of a better view with the with the Parents of Murdered Children area here to the north, and the Veterans Memorial Plaza just to the south. So the Parents of Murdered Children Memorial was originally dedicated in 2013. It's a memorial wall for children, child murder victims of Oregon and Washington, and it has over 100 names, and currently has a wait list for folks waiting those family members to grieve and to add their names to the wall as well. So we're working with the parents of murdered children to make some site improvements. So we're working with a design build consultant, fully provided. All of the funds will be provided privately, so no city funds will be used on this project. Cost roughly $90,000. They're going to add additional wall space, 800 to 1,000 new spaces. So this is a rough sketch. Again, we'll probably have a more refined sketch as we move a little bit closer, but this shows the current outline of the memorial in this general area here. They will be providing additional build-out walking paths and memorial spaces along this upper plateau, and then it will connect with the Veterans Memorial area just to the south, and so allow better connectivity, pedestrian access for anyone who's attended our Memorial Day events at the cemetery, know how those spaces really work together, or at this point really don't work as well together as they probably could. And so working with kind of a twofold, working with the Parents of Murdered Children organization, and then internally as staff, we're going to talk a little bit as well of the Veterans Memorial Plaza area and how we'll better connect those spaces. So for those of you that saw either the news article or the email that I sent out to the group, we were recently successful in applying for a grant through the Oregon State Parks, a Historic Cemeteries grant for $8,000. The total project is about $13,000 for the design and construction documents. And so this will include several improvements, mostly to meet ADA accessibility. The plaza space has several steps that are kind of awkward positions, as well as the foundation is cracking. And so we're going to actually remove one of the pathways due to root upheaval. We have some rather large redwoods in that area. We're going to make some improvements to other areas to allow for ADA accessibility, smooth transitions, and a more usable and functional space. Additionally, the bench memorial plaques that we have will go down along the walkway as opposed to being within the bench areas. So that's really it, but I just wanted to give you a heads up. We're not too far along in this project. We just got the grant. We're starting the conversation on the Memorial Plaza. The Parents of Murdered Children organization is starting to get the ball moving with their planning, and we have not signed official agreements with them yet for the work to be performed, but wanted to make sure you were aware, and if there was any questions that you had or any comments that I can bring back to John and the design team.
I have a question, and I may have missed it. Schedule? Do you have any idea of completion date at this juncture, or is it too early to tell?
Yeah, we're still in the process of planning for start time. The Parents of Murdered Children, they have the funds in place, and they're kind of working through the process of refining the design a little bit. The Veterans Memorial Plaza area, they're planning on doing construction documents over the next several months. And then they're planning on applying for 2 grants coming up in the spring, one being through the Oregon State Parks, and the other being through the local community enhancement grant process. So the enhancement grant is, determined in the end of June. The state park grant will be, I think the deadline is early April, and then we'll find out sometime kind of in that May, June time period.
Okay, thank you. Karen?
First of all, I want to make sure we thank Ginny by name.
Oh, yeah.
She's starting to have way too much fun applying for grants, but she did a really good job on this grant application. But one issue that I have had from the very beginning, and I've harped on this space for about 5 years now, what is identified there as the existing memorial has nothing to do with veterans.
Yes.
And I really think, this will at least give us a functional plaza. I'd still like to look for more money to actually put something veteran in there. And that Black memorial needs to move somewhere. If it's planned into the redesign, it continues to give the wrong impression in a space that we're supposed to be using to memorialize veterans. It was a fundraiser. You can $25, you can get your name on this block. So it's just, if possible, it would be nice to include removing that to another visible location for those who paid to have their names put on it. But it doesn't belong there.
Yeah. And I've had those conversations with Jonathan. I just, I couldn't tell you where that conversation is headed. So I'll get back to the group on that.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Thanks, Phil.
Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was standing up, Dave, for the Buena Vista House. Buena Vista House.
Come over to the other side.
Buena.
I roped her in.
The Vista House.
The Vista House.
Talk
There you
to
go.
old residents.
So we, as you're aware, we've been having an ongoing conversation with PRAC as well as the City Commission on what to do with the Buena Vista House. We most recently met with the City Commission and received directive to coordinate with the Friends Group and come up with a apples to apples comparison, a shared scope of work to be able to provide an anticipated cost estimate back to the City Commission. The stakeholder group has the services of Todd Eisland, a professional architect within our community. He developed in coordination with the city a design and scope of work that we are both in agreement with. He provided a cost estimate for that work internally with his team, and we took those numbers, and now we are working with a secondary consultant to kind of truth those numbers and make sure that we have fresh eyes on the project from different perspectives. So we have his numbers to date, which are roughly $285,000. And then we are getting a second opinion on those numbers based on all of the measurements and the configurations, the scope, the drawings that he's provided, and we're anticipating to have those numbers back sometime during the month of August. So we're shooting for a presentation on August 21st at the City Commission meeting. At this point, with the construction industry the way it is, we're really hoping we can hit that date, but the consultant is pretty busy. And so we reached out to a number of firms, and we have one firm which came highly recommended, but didn't receive a lot of other interest from other firms that we reached out to. So we're really hoping that we're able to get that information back as soon as possible so that we can provide an update to the commission and to PRAC. I'd be happy to answer questions if you have any.
Any questions, comments? No? Okay, all right. Item 6C, Willamette Falls Legacy Update.
Yes. So the Willamette Falls Legacy Project, staff been working behind the scenes to put together the construction documents, working with the contractors on board. So we have a general contractor, construction manager, Lisa Crutcher Lewis, and we're working with our design team to kind of refine the design and make sure that we're comfortable with the budget that we have and trying to come up with the final design that both the construction group is comfortable with and the design group is comfortable with. So we're kind of blending ideas and a lot of brains in the room to come up with the final. We have the design, but coming up with all of the information to start to put together the 30% drawing set. So we're anticipating that in the next month or so. In the meantime, we are also working behind the scenes. I'm sure you've seen that we have a potential purchaser for the property, and so the city and all the other partners are working to provide information to the prospective purchasing group to make sure that they have all the information they need in order to make an informed decision. It's, again, a private process between two private parties, and so we have some information anticipating closing probably could be within the next 30 days, could be a little after, depending on how things line up. So we'll continue to keep our ears out there and see if and when that changes over. Again, the project team has easement rights on the property. We are working with whoever the property owner is, whether it's the current owner or a new owner, on providing the project that we went through the public process for. So we're excited to work with whoever's there and are anticipating, again, breaking ground next spring.
Okay. Great. Any questions? All right. Item 6D, moving on to the Tyrone Woods Memorial Park.
We're making good time with these. So the Tyrone Woods Memorial Park, we're anticipating a presentation to PRAC coming up in our September meeting. With the design team, we're also anticipating a presentation in front of the Caulfield Neighborhood Association on September 24th. We're right now, again, working on construction documents, looking to break ground early next spring and have a dedication ceremony sometime in early fall. So that's where we're at this point.
That's great news.
Yeah.
Question on that one.
Yes, sir.
To follow up to our discussion this last time, I brought up the reaching out to Tyrone's mother to see what we might be able to implement in the park that was, I guess, that he was partial to, things he liked to do, things of interest to him. And you said you were going to do that. Did that get done?
I did have a conversation with her. She said if we had a rifle range, that would probably be something.
An ocean.
Right. Yeah. So she didn't give any specific items that she really thought that needed to be incorporated at this time. But as we start to kind of refine the project, we'll be sitting down with her to see if she's comfortable with that and if there's anything that kind of piques her interest as we're moving forward.
Well, and even some art that maybe reflects interest that he had, or something that actually memorializes the park versus just the name.
Yeah, and we are working with the VFW to provide the plaque and the flag that'll be on site. It'll be uplit, so it'll be seen very visually from as Myers Road does open up. That'll be a main road through that area of town, and we'll see a lot of eyes on it. So we're anticipating that the VFW is anticipating that they'll be able to hit their mark for fundraising, and we're anticipating that we'll be able to recognize Tyrone in a special way there at the park in that way. And I did reach out, like I said, with his mom to see if there was any like smaller thing that we might be able to kind of weave into the design of the project. And she said she would be thinking about it, but when we spoke, there wasn't anything offhand that she thought would be beyond the shooting range.
How about a SEAL quality obstacle course?
Yeah.
That is really good. I like that.
And that might be something we incorporate into the
fenced
playground
dog area.
So, Phil, you mentioned uplit on the flagpole, and just putting it out there that if there's any alternatives, like downward facing lighting, environmentally friendly,
Okay.
Roger's not here to speak to it, but I'm sure if he was, he would be raising his concern. So
The
just-
Dark
just a
Skies
thought.
Initiative.
Yeah.
I know we also have, although it's most likely not going to be an area of sensitivity with the wetlands there, but we also have some downward lighting challenges around the wetlands, and so it's, lighting in general is going to be a point of conflict, but that is duly noted.
Okay. Anything else? All right, item 6E on the agenda, Memorial Bench Program.
Right. I have another short presentation for the group. We brought this up a few months back. I think it was actually with the previous group. So those of you that are new to the committee probably have not seen this yet. But we continue to get requests from the public for memorial benches. We currently don't have a policy in place, and so it's always been, we've made things work and we've installed benches, and it's always been a kind of a disconjointed process both for staff as well as for the public, and so we're trying to put together some procedures, policies that will make it a little easier for both ends. So our current practice, we have no policy but a general practice. So we have no set price for memorial benches. We work on a per bench basis, researching prices and site needs. So depending on the location, how much work we need to put into excavation and laying the pad and the type of bench, depending on the park, there's different prices and different processes. So it's not as clean cut as it probably could be. We have no agreement in place for the length of memorial recognition or maintenance needs. So there's nothing signed necessarily by the donor stating, yes, I understand that this is not in perpetuity, or maybe it is in perpetuity and I'm signing that, we will provide a certain portion of ongoing maintenance at certain points. We have no agreements in place with the families when they're making those donations. We're also not currently tracking any of our needs in our parks as far as where we need benches or placement for future benches. And as of right now, we have installations on hold just so that we can try to address it and come up with a plan that makes sense. So again, challenge, no standardization, also might run into over memorialization of park spaces. A lot of agencies are actually put indefinite holds on their memorial bench programs for that very reason. And then there's, again, no maintenance agreement. The public needs to know what they're getting into. The city needs to understand what our long-term dedication to these amenities are moving forward. Again, it's a finite life cycle for a piece of equipment. Typically for a bench, you're looking at like an 8 to 10 year life cycle replacement. So again, we have just a couple of examples of current parks and benches that we have in place and memorial benches that we have at those same parks. So at Nema Children's Park, we have 3 benches, only 1 memorial bench. It's somewhat recent, installed within the last year or so, right near the playground area. The other benches that are in place are not memorialized. Chapin Park, which is our most memorialized park, we have 12 memorial benches and 3 benches without memorials. And then Hellendale Park, which we currently have an individual waiting to try to do a memorial bench. And we've had conversations with him. He'd like to install it somewhere around the playground area on the lower park. As you can see, we currently have two benches there currently. He'd like to add additional benches. His preference would be over in this area. Identifying the space, it probably would make more sense to put them over here, still have sight lines to the play area, but we have some picnic tables over here, which might make it a little weird with a lot of amenities over on the same side. We also have a couple of memorial trees, which staff would like to move away from. We've not approved any new memorial trees during my time with the city, and I would not recommend memorial trees moving forward. It's difficult to maintain, it's difficult to memorialize, and as a living thing, it's just can get a little tricky. So we've done some research into other agencies and how they take care of their memorial bench programs. So starting with Portland, their program is currently suspended. Their length of commitment, their policy is a 10-year minimum. So for that 10 years, they will maintain that bench, maintain that plaque. After that time, there's no guarantee of either. Vancouver, Washington currently has their program suspended. Their information, they don't currently have a policy listed anywhere that I could find. Tualatin Hills has a $3,000 per bench designation, length of commitment. I did speak with staff there, and they have not been able to provide me their documents to date. But I'm hoping I will get that back shortly. West Lynn has an approximate $1,000 listed on their website, which I'm not sure if I wasn't able to make contact with staff, so I'm not sure if that is a starting point for the bench, and then they add additional for pads or anything else that are required for the installation. They do list in their documentation that there's no guarantee of permanency, and so there's a recognition from the get-go that the family is signing, stating that they understand that it's not a in perpetuity recognition of the commitment for the plaque, for the donation. Lake Oswego, between 2,500 and 3,500. They have certain parks that have the $2,500 bench, and then other parks that have a $3,500 bench. They do listen there. They're not responsible for replacement if it becomes damaged beyond the point of repair. Bend is a little bit pricier, but they also have a 20-year length of commitment. In speaking with their coordinator for the program, she said to date they have not removed any plaques for memorialization, but their paperwork does say that they have the opportunity to remove them after that 20-year period, or move them to a different area if there's another family that would like to donate in the area, and the family that is currently donated is not interested in keeping that donation. So if they're not able to make contact with the original donor, they can change it over to a new donor for that area for the bench. I was looking up information for Vancouver, Washington, and ran into Vancouver, BC, and so I threw it up there. They have a 10-year, definitive 10 years. At that point, they remove it. $5,500 is the cost. Roughly equates to $40 to $100 in the exchange rate. I had to look that up. That was interesting. And then East Bay Park District in Oakland, which they have a very specific contract that they have individuals sign. Makes a lot of sense. Maybe is a little harsh with how exact and how systematic their program is, but they have a $2,500 cost. At year 9, they send a letter out to the family and state, if you would like to continue, you need to let us know by this date. By the 10-year mark, they literally go out and remove the plaque, and if the family has not let them know that they would like the plaque is then officially removed. They do state as well that they will repair or replace if it's damaged during that 10-year period one time at no cost to the family. In conversations with the National Park Service, they've stated that they tend to not do memorial plaques because there are issues with damage, vandalizing, needing to move benches from their current location to new locations. Kind of a best practice in researching almost all any of the programs that have documentation list that it is the purview of the agency to move at any point at their discretion the donated bench to a different area if need be. Additionally, almost to a T, all of the agencies that had information stated that it was a gift, and at the time of turning over to the organization that there was a no ownership by the donor in either the bench or the plaque. And so anything that is installed on site with their donated funds is then owned by the city or the organization. So recommendations from staff, we're looking to do a $2,000 per bench with annual CPI indexing. Currently it costs roughly $2,000 for materials, installation, all of anything that is associated with the bench. The fee will include, again, bench, plaque, concrete pad, associated labor. There's no guarantee of permanency. The plaque will remain for the life cycle of the bench, minimum of 10 years. If the bench is still usable, I don't think we're going to go in there and remove plaques and remove the bench. That doesn't make a lot of sense. The donor is responsible for replacement of the plaque if damaged. So it also, to me, doesn't make fiduciary sense for the public agency to continue to replace plaques to the detriment of our budget to highlight the memorial of an individual. And so to, again, make that the responsibility of the donor if they would like to continue to memorialize their family member. So to produce, we will produce a bench inventory for all benches and memorial benches in our park system. The bench must fit within an area of need. So we're not going to install a bench just because somebody wants to have a bench installed in a specific area, but it needs to make the most sense for the aesthetics and the usability and the safety of the park. And then staff will bring back a formal recommendation to PRAC, which would include the policy and associated forms. So any of those materials, if you guys are in alignment with staff's feeling of the program, we would come back most likely in September with those associated forms and policies to make sure that you were comfortable with those before moving on to the City Commission. So again, next steps, we would bring those back in September. If we needed, we could also have a conversation in December. As a reminder, typically our November, December meetings are a combined meeting in early December. And then if needed, we would then have the City Commission meeting approval in January. If the secondary meeting with PRAC was not required, we would go to the City Commission in December. With that, I will open up to questions or comments or thoughts.
There's two benches at the cemetery that the Women's Club donated. Mm-hmm. And 2 years ago, we worked with a Boy Scout who repaired and refinished them. Can we include some kind of notice that your bench is going to be retired? Because, you know, there's some people, it's like in the top part, if the bench is dedicated to the Blooms,
Yeah.
the family's going to want something like that to remain and would have the means to pay for a new bench or pay for repair. This kind of sounds like at the end of 10 years, you just toss the bench.
No, and we have several families that have remained in contact with the city and have helped to make repairs to benches at Hillendale, at the cemetery, at the library, for that matter. And that's not our intention. It's, you know, if we have an amenity that is beyond its life cycle, that there is no community connection as far as being able to make repairs to it to keep it usable. If it's a safety issue, then we need to make those repairs, and it doesn't make a lot of sense for us to continue to memorialize that donation, you know, in memory of, for, again, 50 years from now, 100 years from now, as a system. But if we have family members that are in town that are, you know, interested in working with us on providing those repairs and making fixes, we would be very happy, which is why we put down the minimum of 10 years. So if we have a bench that's still being repaired and being able to be usable, it makes sense to be able to continue to memorialize the family that's helping to maintain that bench.
I think basically I'm just suggesting that we include language that an effort will be made to notify the family.
Oh, yeah. And this is a bullet point, and that's a good point. We would, in our policy and a lot of the policies, kind of best practice that we were seeing was that you would reach out to, so one, the family is responsible to update their contact information as they move, change. The city then would reach out to the family members if and when we get to a point where we have to make a decision on what to do with the bench, whether or not they want to help us to make repairs or whether or not they would like us to just move on and allow someone else to offer up to make those improvements.
Will park staff be deciding, what styles of benches are appropriate for the architectural design and functionality and durability for the park? Or is that something that the family is choosing? Or are you providing, a kind of a menu of benches?
We have many different benches in our parks.
I know you do. And not all benches are equal.
Not all benches are equal. So we have a couple different benches in our park system. They would need to fit within the context of the other benches within those parks. And so we have some parks like Library Park, which has probably 4 different types of benches just because of the timing with some of the memorial benches and then the redesign of the park. And so as we move forward and we have kind of a standard style that we have been using, which is, this is kind of the more recent standard style that we've been using. We also recently did some replacements with some metal benches at the senior center as an example. And so just trying to get a sense of, when they're damaged, when we have graffiti or, things like that, is it easier to be able to paint over or scrub off on the metal benches as opposed to the wooden benches, which require, we can make repairs, we can sand them if we need to, but it's just a different operational need. And so we're going back and forth with different benches in our park system, but trying to get away from having, a park like Hillendale with so many benches that may have, I think there's 2 different bench styles at Hillendale. And trying to get to a standardized bench that we use at most of our parks that makes it a little easier for us.
I would just make the comment, making sure that the bench is skateboard proof in terms of grinding. And so with those, and they'll grind on wood benches that then create the splinters as you put your legs down there. And when they don't have the arms on them in the middle or the side, it also is more conducive to sleeping, or putting the tarps on them as an A-frame tent when it rains. Sorry, Portland. But I guess to see a bench without arms in wood,
Yeah.
So it would, if it costs more to have more like a composite bench, like you see at NRP, they have all those samples that are NRPA. I'd be curious to see if it might, in terms of duration and maintenance in the long run, if it might be less costly.
It's a good idea.
I think that one you showed is at Rivercrest near the play area. So you don't get any running speed with a skateboard right there.
Oh, that one.
Just be surprised.
Nothing's everything. I mean, you do. Creative.
Yes.
Any other?
Yeah, I got it.
Oh, go ahead.
Thanks.
Derek, I think.
Is there in place a decision-making process on who is able to purchase one of those? Or is it just anybody with $2,000 can memorialize a bench? Because, I'm just thinking of all possibilities if, someone or a family in this case, obviously, wanted to purchase a bench on a person that was,
Less than favorable to the community.
Yeah, or, part of the community or all of it or whatever, had an issue with it. Now you got a problem.
Yeah, there is some language in some of the documents that I've read through that states that, and again, we would have to run it by our legal counsel, but something to the effect of, the person being memorialized must have been in good standing, not have had, I forget the level of how they delineated, but basically, you're not going to give a bench to somebody that was a, known murderer or, a child molester or something like that in the community. But again, yes, we would definitely research, those things. The thing that a lot of agencies don't memorialize pets, but maybe as we're moving forward with dog parks, maybe that's an area that we could explore. A lot of agencies also don't allow sponsorship. So instead of being memorialized to, Grandpa Joe, it would be in recognition of, Pepsi or something, and they would buy a bench and they would have their logo on a bench. Again, I'm not super concerned about that, but some agencies call that out specifically.
I have a few points. Can you go back to the slide that has your bullets on it?
Yes.
I guess I'll just start at the top. The 2,000 per bench with the indexing, I want to make this as friendly to our community as possible, right? We want them to do this, want to encourage community involvement. At the same time, we got to make sure our costs are covered and we're not going, we're not creating a deficit over benches. I just find the 2,000 or any number for that matter too restrictive to the city. So your second bullet point already outlines the calculation. It'll include the, what it includes and then the cost of those. So maybe if we could, instead of having a number, include the calculation as to how that number will be, how we'll arrive at that number, because costs change, as we have seen with construction just over the last couple of years. But then maybe in the document or on the website, put an average, an estimate, or a range so they know what to expect. And I think we can get those numbers of maybe, I don't think we're going to have, floods of calls for benches every month. But if we can give them an idea based on the last, dozen benches we've done or what it was over the last, year, this is about what people have paid kind of thing. I think that's will protect us a little bit more because we could say $2,000, they put down the $2,000, they met all the requirement, and it's $3,500. And now we're stuck. And so I think we can handle, some of the maintenance, vandalism, that kind of thing, just as upkeep in the park. But the cost of the bench, I think, should be the donor. So if we can open that up to protect the city, I think we're better off. At the same time, giving a clear picture to those paying the money to what to expect. And then the other thing is you say no guarantee of permanency, and then you say plaque will remain for life cycle of bench minimum 10 years. So when you say no guarantee of permanency, what are you getting at there?
Like we discussed previously, like earlier on, with we'll maintain the bench and the plaque for a 10-year period. If the plaque and bench last 20 years, we're not going to go and rip it out. But if it gets to a point where it's not safe or it's unusable, we're not going to continue to memorialize somebody for their donation of an item that's no longer there.
Okay, so by saying no guarantee of permanency, you're saying beyond that 10-year period. We're guaranteeing them 10 years.
We'll guarantee 10 years. After 10 years, we will keep the bench and plaque as long as we can. If the plaque wears out or gets damaged or stolen or something after 10 years, we're not going to continue to pay, $500 a pop for somebody that donated a $1,200, $1,500 bench.
And I don't want to get too far in the weeds with the legal specifics of the document because we'll see all that. But I think it's probably the intent that the donor have some say in where the bench is placed.
Yes.
Granted, they're not going to be allowed to put it in the middle of the baseball field or something. It doesn't make any sense, but I would like them to be able to choose that within the scope of what we want to do at the park, but also have the ability, if it needs to be moved, that we have the ability to move it, because we may not be able, we say 10 years, but if we've got to do something in that park, we don't want to postpone our project because a bench has to be there for 3 more years.
Yeah.
But, you know, there's some allowance in there, not that we can move it wherever, but under certain circumstances, major renovation and such, that we can move the bench, and we would work with the donor that they would get to choose another spot within the same park, and of course, with our approval and so forth. I just would hate to see that we're stuck for 10 years and we want to do something to the park and we can't because there's a bench there.
Yeah, a lot of language in some of the other documents stated that we'd make our best effort to keep it as close to the original location as possible, but that it's at the district's or the agency's discretion to move it as needed for a number of items, including renovations, events.
I think that's good. I would say, you know, people have whenever you read a document before you make the phone call or before you fill out the application, you're gonna have an opinion of what that means, right?
Yeah.
And so to improve the opinion of the potential donors, if we could make that a little more friendly and simply not just say move it close, but that they would get they would get to request upon movement of the bench, they would be able to request. Of course, we still get to approve that. It just makes it, I don't know, I think it just sounds like they're more involved, because close makes sense. At the same time, they may have their first choice and their second choice, and their second choice is across the park for some other reason. And we're gonna move it close, and they didn't get anything they wanted out of the deal.
Good point.
So if we could just try to include them in that, I think it'd be a little more friendly program, and encourage people to do it more. And I think everyone would benefit from that. I agree with the bench in the picture, I think, is reasonable. Kind of hard to put a skateboard on that one.
That's the reason for it.
Which is good, but it still looks good. And it would be nice if we'd be able to offer them some sort of menu, maybe 2 or 3 options. And of course, I think it makes sense for us as a city to restrict that based on the park it's going to go and the location. Like, you don't get, one park may only have 1 option, but another park may have 2 or 3 options, depending on where you choose.
Anything else, Troy?
Not right now.
Okay.
I'm good.
Bill?
A couple of things. Can we go back to the first bullet point where we saw different districts and how they handle their program? Did you give a reason why Portland and Vancouver have suspended the program?
Portland's, at least their written response was that they would, due to staff transition.
The position that was filled is vacant, recently filled within the last few weeks, but it's been vacant for months and months. And also the inundation of requests that have come in the last year or 2 is overwhelming to the city of Portland for Parks and Rec.
And Bend had a similar, when I spoke with them, they said they're a growing city and they've had a lot of requests recently, and they're most likely going to be reevaluating their program as well.
That was true with Vancouver. Is that probably the reason as well? Or is there another reason that you had
Just
heard?
said it was suspended. I did not get in contact with anyone from Vancouver.
And it's also a really, I know in Portland, a very staff intensive program. So many contacts, real relationship based, and so the number of points of contact per individual for 1 bench, even if it's paid for, in a lot of ways, is very, very expensive.
Yeah, I can see the administrative management
Yeah.
being overwhelming. Yeah.
And that's partly why I think if we leave it, not just to 2,000, but leave it open, that gives us some movement on how busy it becomes based on the demand for the benches.
And I think
could
from
fix that in the
from
cost.
staff's perspective, having a clear-cut cost creates at least then the certainty for them and for us, where we don't have to try to barter or figure out that's actually going to be this much, and then we have to say why and be able to give that. I mean, going back and looking at the most recent benches that we've put in, they've all been around that number, and so it's a number we're fairly comfortable with, where we're not losing money, still being able to provide the service and provides an amenity of the park that's not currently there. We just want to make sure that we're doing it in a way that we're not creating undue illusions of perpetuity for the family that may not be there, to make sure there's some certainty for the family and the donor.
One alternative you might consider, we ran into the same problem in Peoria with numbers of requests for memorial benches and trying to take care of that. And in one of our community parks, we did a memorial walk in which we put glazed bricks in, just the name of the individual that the family wanted to memorialize. We found that was a fairly inexpensive way to create, a message, I guess, that somebody was trying to memorialize somebody. And, bricks last a little bit longer than some things, but not everything, depending on what you drop on it. But the nice thing about it was because it was a memorial walk, it was concentrated in that area, and then you didn't have, things going all over.
Plaques everywhere.
Yeah, plaques going everywhere.
I had another, can we go back to the Hillendale example of how many benches are? 13 of them. So one question I have, or maybe a suggestion, is that instead of adding more benches, that those are the benches that they can choose from to memorialize, that is, I'm sorry. Whether it's in that position or maybe you want to eliminate some of those benches, I don't know altogether, but it is a huge, as you already know, a huge maintenance task, especially when a graffiti artist gets going. And unpainted wood is very difficult to take out the graffiti. Quite often you have to replace the boards, and we know what that means in cost. So I'm suggesting that painting, even though it doesn't sound right, but painting is the only way to keep up with vandalism when you're vandalizing with markers anyway on an unpainted treatment. The only way to keep up with vandalism is that you need to have as much time covering it up as they took putting it down, or it's a losing battle. And so that's a suggestion I have, and perhaps the benches you have there now could be the ones that are those positions are the ones you'd want to continue to use to be memorialized, because otherwise you couldn't add any, or you wouldn't want to add any more new benches to that park. But that's just a suggestion I would put forward, and I'm sure the guys at the maintenance shop would agree that it takes a long time to take graffiti off, and we'll have more as time goes on. I guarantee you. Working in Portland is just moving this way. I think also as I think the range is probably something you should consider, and not just a fixed fee. I agree, and there's a reason why, perhaps there was a reason why there's a range on a couple of those agencies. And some benches, for example, what you showed on the promenade with the metal period style and all that wood, cedar wood that's put in there, that's going to cost, that may even cost more than $2,000 when you're talking about a maintenance of that bench for a period of 10 years. So those are just some things I could throw out that I think make a lot of sense, but it is a headache at some point. You're going to be inundated. There's no question about that.
Great.
Karen?
I don't think having a...
Alicia, that's right enough for a while.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I've been trying since Troy started talking, so. I don't think having a policy in place is going to open the floodgates, because people are already asking to do this. And I will say, I absolutely disagree with Troy. When the Women's Club put the bench in for Rosalie Bloom at the Tot Park, it took a ridiculous amount of time to get that done, because you had to talk to one person about the bench, and then you had to figure out the plaque, and then you had to figure out how they were going to do the pad, and when they were going to pour the pad, and when was the bench going to get here. It would be so nice to fill out a form, say, check one of 3 benches, check one of 2 plaque designs, and hand you a check.
I can see that.
So much easier.
Yeah.
But I would say to start with, let's not underprice it, because I think we paid about $2,000 for roses. So, maybe 2,500 would be.
Yeah, and I was trying to write that balance. I mean, they are very close to $2,000 a piece. I did tie in the CPI indexing. We do that on a number of our other fees within our system, which our finance department tracks, and then we update annually depending on if it makes sense. So if it's something that's going to be like that'll bring it to $23.14, we may wait until the next year and bump it up to $24 instead. For the bench program, it's around $2,000. Each year we would go and update the CPI, look at, a 3% index per year, and it would continue to go with inflation.
Yeah, because you've got some kind of things you don't have control of, because you've got the bench cost, you've got the plat cost.
Yep.
You've got your staff time doing the concrete, your
Agreed.
Staff time doing the bolting.
Yeah.
So I think 2,000 is really low.
It is, honestly, but I was trying to take into consideration the last time that I presented. I remember Troy stating that he didn't want to put barriers in front of folks trying to provide an amenity that was of usefulness to the system, and I can appreciate that. And so, looking at what's our minimum cost? Where are we not going to lose money? That's kind of the number I came up with. If it was $2,200, I'd probably be a little bit more comfortable with it. If it was $25, I would be probably really comfortable with it. But again, if you, as a group, have interest in fudging that number a little bit, I'd be happy to have that conversation.
Well, and for the record, I'm not suggesting we send out to bid and price every single bench on every application.
Yeah.
I'm simply saying you're going to have your packages, you're going to have your vendors. You're going to know this bench in this location is going to cost X dollars.
Yeah.
But by putting the range is only to give them an idea on first look. Because if you say, I'll put this bench in for you, but it's going to cost whatever we pay, I have no clue. That's $500 or $20,000.
Yeah.
Right? And so a range just says typically between this and this. But what it does is then put the city in a position not to mark it up, but their request may have come right after wages just got increased, or just after the price of concrete went up 50%, or some other thing. And so by saying you're just going to cover the costs, you can do that calculation with them probably over the phone or within 24 hours and get back and say, here's your cost. Because you're going to know, but it gives flexibility for us to do that and make sure we're getting all the cost in there and not going in the hole over benches.
Lisa?
I guess my last comment would be the bench program would also, it provides the opportunity from a visual aesthetic perspective. I know there's been a lot of conversations in terms of many of the parks being a little older, looking a little run down, looking used. Depending on the style of bench, each park has its own identity and its own brand, or could have a brand identity. And, having furniture, amenities that are higher quality, oftentimes people are more likely to treat parks better and visually are more welcoming and attractive. Some of the parks, the wood benches look old and worn. Every time I walk around Chafin Park, it's like, oh, these poor benches. So I think, in terms of the bigger picture of how, without having much money in the system for parks, except for new parks through SDC, if there's a bench program, could you potentially kind of upgrade the visual aesthetic look to the park user if you had a higher quality bench, and if you had a higher, not all benches have to be the same in all parks, though I know maintenance would love everything to be the same, but, because it's easier to maintain. But at the same point, you can give identity and, and more community feel if, if some of the parks have different consistent feel, though it would take time, obviously, like in Hillendale. That's my final comment.
Thank you. I'm not going to even touch the subject of memorial trees.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I won't even go down there, but it is something I'm curious about, but not for this discussion. Another time.
Fair enough.
Any other comments? Questions? Anything else before we move on?
So just for clarity, as a group, I will bring back a more formal recommendation, forms, policy for you guys to look over. What I heard from the group, from some of you, is that we probably could go a little higher with the number and still be comfortable with that. Is that my general understanding from the group? Okay.
Yeah.
And again, a lot of the things, I'll go back and probably watch the tape, but we will work into a lot of those items, kind of those best practices that we talked about and some of the concerns that you brought up into the written document. So hopefully all those things will be covered. But again, if you see things that were not listed, we'll have some opportunity for you to make adjustments and add additional comments at the next meeting.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on. 6F, Parks and Rec Master Plan.
Thank you. So we are in the process of putting together the RFQ for the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. We've had conversations with consultants and tried to refine the scope of, there you go, the scope of the project. I kept coming back to, we have two different things that we're trying to accomplish with over this biennium that are really of importance to the Parks and Recreation Department. One being, again, the funding piece and having a public involvement process for that, and then the other being the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, which also includes a public involvement piece. And they're so interwoven that it makes a lot of sense. And when talking with some of the consultants, they thought that it probably would be a good approach to kind of blend the two and have kind of a shared vision, shared focus, maybe have some additional subcommittee kind of conversations, but that we're moving forward with a lot of the same information, that it makes sense to probably have one larger conversation as opposed to trying to break it up into two separate groupings. And so we're looking at doing a larger conversation around Parks and Recreation funding, but also looking at the Parks and Recreation Master Plan for what we are providing currently, but again, what are we providing in future years for our community members? So we'll be putting together that process. The public requests for being involved in the stakeholder group will be going out in August, and then the kickoff will most likely be during the month of September, sometime after the school year starts. Hopefully, get folks under their feet a little bit, as it were, for those family members that have littles in school. But again, we're moving forward with that and are very excited to have some direction with that. Our CIP list that we currently have was a 20-year CIP list that runs through 2020. So we are very interested in looking forward to what that new CIP list could and should be, including any options that come up through the public engagement process for the master plan.
Great.
I have a question.
Yes, Bill.
And is the Clackamat Park or that waterfront master plan going to be separate from the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, that the consultant that we're looking to hire? Is that a separate process for this committee?
Yes, so the Parks and Recreation Master Plan will be separate from the Clackamat Park Master Plan. The Clackamat Park Master Plan was put a little bit on hold. We are currently, I guess I can move into that item. We have been working with the Oregon State Marine Board on the hydrology study. We hired an engineer to look at whether moving it 350 feet downstream or 150 feet from that location would make the most sense. There was concerns from the City Commission and from this group that moving it 350 feet took up too much of the green space and was too much of an impact negatively on the overall feel of the park. The hydrologist looked at what it would take to move it a little bit closer to the current ramp, not quite as far downstream, and so we have some information back from him. Additionally, we're working with, so instead of doing a full master plan, Staff is working with a firm to reconceptualize the park and what it could be. So yes, we are still moving the ramp, but that's one piece of a broader puzzle. And if we reallocate spaces or we make changes to how it's laid out for other uses, it may make the impact of moving the ramp feel like less of an impact and better incorporate the other uses into the park. And so we're in the process of doing that currently. We'll be hopefully providing a joint meeting, and again, we're trying to work through timing, a joint meeting with PRAC and with the City Commission, again, similarly to the last one, where we provide information from the consultant, from the hydrology study, and information from the park design aspects at that joint meeting, so the decision can be made whether or not we move forward. The hydrologist is recommending that if we want to move forward with moving it into the 150-foot range as opposed to the 350-foot range, that we do additional studying for that. And so there's some decisions that need to be made by the City Commission and recommended by PRAC, whether or not we move forward with that.
Do you feel that there could be a third option, which is not to put a ramp in at all? Is that some City Commission is willing to weigh? Certainly there's certain people that don't use a boat, don't fish. There's three, in fact, Gladstone opened up a new ramp onto the Willamette, so they've got plenty of options for people to put boats and plenty of space to park over in that waterfront park. And I'm on that feeling, or that maybe it's a minority or maybe not, but I think that's another option that we should consider, not putting a boat ramp in there at all. Our park could be used for other reasons. The parking could be used for, and certainly more grass, more picnic benches. Those are the kind of things I'd like to see. And of course, part of that master plan that we're trying to get through is what do we do with the campers, the people, and moving that site perhaps. So I know that's separate from, but certainly I think that should be something we could at least discuss, and maybe will a consultant be involved in this, on that park then? I guess is what I'm asking, making a decision, or is that our
The decision on what we do with the park is fully our decision as a city. So the City Commission obviously has that ultimate decision on what we do with the park. And then this group is making a recommendation to the City Commission on what to do with the park. I'll say that I have had conversations with the Marine Board and what it would look like if we did not have a ramp there. We do have certain commitments through grant funding and things that would need to be repaid. But that is always an option. So if we decide as a city not to have a boat ramp there, that's fully within our right to decide to not have a ramp. We have two different consultants. Again, we have the hydrologist that was hired by the Marine Board to look at where we could move things, and then the city hired a consultant to look at how we lay out the park, and if we do move the ramp into the new location, how do we better incorporate the other uses into that space with the ramp being in its new location. So how do we mitigate some of those losses of green space that we would currently see if we did no other changes but move the ramp? What are the options that we could do to mitigate that? So that's what we're looking at currently.
Maybe if you would, you could, when you're talking with city commissioners for this joint work session we'll have for them at some point in time, that be considered as an agenda item or a point of discussion as no ramp at all?
Yeah. So what I will be providing to the group is a kind of a menu item list of here are your options, here's what you could do. And one of them will include not having a ramp and then what the ramifications of that would look like.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Item 6G, Pratt Golf.
So when we spoke recently about our goals, we stated that you guys would like to review these periodically. So I have your goals here, and I'm going to pass them around. So this is kind of an open time for you to review the goals, discuss whether or not we should set up subcommittees to do any work on any of these. If there's anything that staff can do to help support that, I'd be happy to help coordinate anything that we can. But this is, again, just a kind of an open time for you as a group. And I'm dedicated to bring this forward quarterly at your request, and we can make adjustments to that as needed.
So item 5 is in the works.
Correct.
As is 3.
And so we've kind of blended a little bit item 1 and 5, as we just talked about. And then item 2, we'll have an update hopefully in August, if not in September.
Okay. And then item 4, has the naming process begun yet, or how is that?
That is an excellent question. I did send out an email to the group with some news on number 4.
Saw that. Thank you.
And so we will have, and for those without agendas, number 4 are without the goals. Number 4 is to complete formal naming process for the undeveloped park known as Filbert Run and identify funding for construction of the park. So we're not putting out any press releases or doing anything kind of public output until the state asks we don't do anything until it's formalized this fall.
Okay.
But we can probably in fall start to engage a naming process similar to what we did with Tyrone Woods Memorial Park. Which would help us kind of in that, getting the word out that we have a process, we have funding in place, and we're interested in getting naming opportunities for the park.
Great.
When do you anticipate that will start? The process on the naming?
We could probably anytime after, I think it's September, late September, that
The decision
that
on
it
the
becomes
grant.
official. So we probably in October or November, we could initiate a naming process.
Great. Any questions, any other comments, or any other questions or comments that anyone has?
I guess number 1, when will we have that on the agenda to review the deferred maintenance and park infrastructure needs and then explore the funding solutions?
Yeah, so we are, again, kind of blending that with our Parks and Recreation System Master Plan conversation. And so doing a overall community engagement around what we want our park system to be, how we want to maintain our park system, and what type of capital reinvestment we want to see. At the tail end of that, we will have a further conversation and probably some statistically valid surveys that'll happen around how we move forward with any kind of formal either bonding or levies or public vote for things that could fund it, such as utility fees, things like that.
So that's the tail end of the system master plan?
I think it will really be weaved in the entire conversation, honestly. But on the tail end, there will be a decision that probably has to be made around funding. How do we fund our system master plan, which includes how are we currently maintaining our current park system? Is it being maintained at the level that we would like to see? Are there things that we should be doing that we're not currently doing? Those types of conversations. But that's kind of and why I put a lot of thought into like how they really interact with each other and two separate but equal conversations that are happening that at some point blend, or if we just kind of, this is our system, what do we want it to be, how do we want to maintain it, as one broader conversation, which I think leads probably to less confusion overall for the general community as we're having these conversations.
Yeah.
So, according to our bylaws, how often can we update these goals?
We can update them as often as you would like.
So I would suggest then, since number 3 is done and number 5 is done, that we just that we adjust these to remove them. There's no point in having goals of what we're going to accomplish when we've already accomplished that. And that allows us then to move in something else that might be of value.
I beg to differ. I would say item 3 and 5 have started, but they're not completed.
Well, right, but it doesn't say complete. It says to begin phase 1, we've done that. And then it says to initiate the system master plan, we've initiated it. So those are done. If we want to amend them to say complete, then that would be a new goal, and we could certainly do that. But these, as they're written, are completely, they're done.
I would agree with 3, but 5, I think there's more to it than that. You're talking about public comment and
True. Okay.
engagement. So
Yeah.
I think there's a piece there that still needs.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. But if it's done, let's not have it on here, is my suggestion.
I agree.
And the whole purpose of goals for a year is at the end of the year to go back to the list and say, good us, we did this, and this. We don't change the goals every meeting. The other question, though, is staff doing anything on the off-leash, so-called off-leash pilot project? That keeps showing up on goals and nothing happens.
Yeah.
And I know that we were supposed to have some additional discussion on maybe a new dog park. I am not a dog person. Lisa proved earlier tonight that she very much is a dog person. But I think that might warrant a subcommittee and some planning.
Yeah, I would agree.
And I think it's one that we really need to get boots on the ground doing something about, because I hear a lot from
Yeah,
people.
I would agree, Karen.
So going back to both your comment, Karen, and Troy, I would actually propose moving 3 down to a new area, saying items accomplished, and you can put a date behind that. That keeps it in the forefront of the public to say, yes, they did complete this, and it's reviewed on a regular basis. And if we want to or need to, we can always bring in another goal.
Yeah, I think the
Why
value.
wait a year or two, pat ourselves on the back?
Yeah, I mean, because if we accomplish these goals by October, let's stop meeting. There's nothing more to do. We have no more goals. So, I mean, I don't think the purpose of a goal, like Chris is saying, is wait to the end of the period and say, we did it.
Yeah.
If we've done it, let's put some other things on the front that need to be done. Like, let's not create a bureaucracy and sit around.
Yeah, I'd much rather have the public see us doing something and that we've accomplished something rather than just.
That's our job. That's what they're paying us to do, right? Just get stuff done.
Well, here's a suggestion. How about items accomplished or items completed? And then we have other bullets, additional items of importance to PrAC. Those could be bumped up.
Well, I would say, I know that we have committed to reviewing these quarterly, which I think is great. And I think we should keep them in the forefront of our minds as we're going about and doing the work that we're doing. I would hate to spend too much time in trying to reorganize the chairs on the deck, as it were. If we want to add something as a goal that's currently not listed, great. Or if there's something like the dog parks that we have not really put a lot of time into, if we want to really, dig in and put some work in on those items, I would highly recommend we do that. But I would hate to spend too much time talking about how we're shifting things from, accomplished, again, they're your goals. I'm happy to help in whatever way I can, but
I don't see this as moving the deck chairs. I see this as reporting to the public. Here's what we're going to do, and here's what we've done. Because if this is a public document or available to the public, and they look at this, and there's no accountability of when it's been done, their question is, okay, when are you going to do these? And I think it's great transparency with the community to say, this is a working document. In fact, maybe this isn't the right format. Maybe the right format is when was this added and when was it completed? Because then that will show the things that get moved. They got added in September of 2019, and then it got completed in January of 2020, and then something else got added. And they can see that it's a moving document. And I will remind everybody, because I like to do that, is I was not real in favor of these goals to begin with, because very few of them are measurable. Increased public involvement. If we're not tracking public involvement, we can't measure if it's increased. We can only go by what we feel. And so the challenge with these goals is they're not goals. They're good ideas, they're thoughts. It might be some sort of a mission statement, it might be a bylaw, but it's not a goal if it's not measurable. And so when it says begin, check mark, we've begun. If we want to then say that's complete and let's add another goal of complete phase one, then that's another goal. We've moved on from the begin phase.
We're going to end up with a matrix.
No.
I think it's just an accounting of here's what we were going to do. Here's what we said we're going to do in January. These got done in March. We've added a couple more. I don't think we have to add only when something gets done. I think we add as needed. And we may take 2 things off of there that are completed and not add. We may add 3 that are really important to this community, and we may not take off anything. And that's okay, because that's what we're doing.
To Troy's point, if you don't have a measure of success, they don't know why we're here. We're here for 2.5 hours, 3 hours talking and talking and talking, and we bring up this list of documents and nothing's done on it. And frankly, I'm tired of seeing the same things on here and nothing getting done.
Stay informed.
Karen?
Advocate. That's not measurable.
Okay, Troy, we had a very prolonged conversation on that before. I don't want to have it again tonight.
But we might have to have it, though.
In response, okay, this opened up as we agreed quarterly to review our goals. We are currently now noting that there is work being done, that we are moving toward them. If you want to do it differently, make a motion. I'll be happy to vote no. These have taken so much of our time. And yes, they are aspirations, but to me, they're fine. We review them quarterly. We have just now put on the record that we're starting 3. 1 and 5 are going to take way too long, but that's okay. Brought up the fact that yes, we need to address the dogs. That's what the point of the review is. That is where we're being open. These aren't showing up somewhere that members of the public are daily checking to see if we got anything done. This is our opportunity to say, we got this done, oops, we better get busy and get this done. I'm happy.
Just because they're not showing up daily to review it doesn't mean we don't owe them transparency. That is foolishness. They deserve to know what we're doing, and we need to tell them whether they're asking us or not.
What are the other committees doing? What is the standard?
Annual goals.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not positive. We could put something together that was more of a strategic plan for, here we have our goals, and then we have our, strategic matrix of how we get there, what we're doing, how that, what the actual deliverable is, what it looks like to be successful for, one of these items. So, I think to Troy's point with number 5 as an example, so initiate the master plan, hire the consultant, conduct the public engagement, and then adopt the master plan document. I mean, those are pretty measurable.
Yeah, those are.
But we could get into more detail with timing on those things. Some of them are a little less measurable, but we are working on them. And the advocate for Clackamas Park master plan and assess the impacts it will have on recreational opportunities within the park. It's a little mushy, but we could have a document that says specific things that we want to do as a group for those items. But again, that's we're digging in, and maybe that's a subcommittee to talk about our goals and how we're going to get there.
So I'd like to propose that we just consider this conversation our second quarter review for 2019. And also propose that maybe in September, at September's meeting, we come back with, Troy and I could work together and come up with a proposed format of how this list could look and review it then, along with where we're at with this list. And just review it there and see if we can't provide a little bit more transparency to the public and a little bit more information.
I'll agree to join you on that.
I hear a subcommittee.
So today, we could just put a couple words in here and then send that off if you want to do that as a subcommittee, but certainly under number 2, instead of advocate for, complete the Clackamat Master Plan and assess the impacts it will have on recreational opportunities. Number 3, complete construction of the Tyrone S. Woods Memorial Park. Number 5, complete the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. Hire consultants. We could actually put number 1 in there if we care to, as a second sentence in that. And so those are ways to just settle this right at the moment. The goal is to complete. Not only do we initiate it, but it's to complete it.
I agree. And keep it simple.
That's simple. Complete it.
Simple's good.
Make a motion.
Do we have a motion?
Have a further conversation over on this side.
I just have a comment of, if and when Oregon City Parks and Rec goes out for a bond, when you go out for a bond, oftentimes you are putting forth, this is what we've done. Isn't that amazing? Don't you want to give us money to do more? And so in whatever form or shape and however much time is spent on this, in terms of the long range vision of it, like thinking of how can it be packaged so it's easily, able to be used in, in bond materials in front of council, in front of the community.
I agree.
Yeah, very good. Okay, can we make a motion to accept this as our quarterly meeting,
Bill started it.
quarterly review? Thank you.
So I make that motion that we revise the vocabulary on these bullet points under goals to sort of advocate on number 2 would be complete for the Clackamat Park Master Plan and assess the impacts it will have on the recreation opportunities within the park. Number 3 would be complete Phase 1 construction of Tyrone S. Woods Memorial Park. Number 4 is complete the formal naming process for the undeveloped park known as Filbert Run. Number 5 is complete Parks and Recreation System Master Plan. And we could put 1 as a second sentence to that as part of that completion is reviewing the deferred maintenance and park infrastructure needs. And leave number 6 alone.
Second.
So, for clarification, on number 5, since we're going to move it to complete, do we want to then remove hire consultant, conduct public engagement, adopt the master plan? Because the way it's written anyway almost suggests that that's what completing it, that's what determines if it's complete.
Certainly the public input is huge.
No, it is, but it's just not part of the.
And it could be.
It is part, but.
Yeah.
Can I make a counter proposal in that we leave the verbiage as is for this, the second quarter review? Let Troy and I come back and work with a revised format as a proposal, which would include probably some verbiage changes. And then at that point, we can
Vote on the review at that time. I think that makes sense.
And it might accomplish exactly what you're looking for.
I'll accept that friendly amendment.
Well, how about do it the easy way? I withdraw my second. You can withdraw your motion.
Okay.
So we need a
That's much
second.
easier.
No.
We withdrew.
Withdraw.
Okay, we're done. Got it.
So, and I don't think we need a motion just to say that we're going to work together on a format change, and then we'll come at the September meeting with that proposal.
So basically, we're going to table this till next meeting.
So per your bylaws, subcommittees can be formed at the discretion of the chair. So
Madam Chair, are you okay with us meeting?
I am
subcommittee?
perfectly great with
Okay.
that. The only request is keep it simple. And
that's simple.
not high maintenance, please.
And no 3-hour discussion.
It's a request. Okay. Any other comments on goals? All right, moving on to item 6H on our agenda, DC Lateret Park.
So we are just about to finalize construction documents for DC Lateret Park. As you're aware, we have received a couple of grants and received additional funding through the budget process. As part of the overall design of the park, we were working with a local team that was interested in doing some court design processes on the park. As part of the public engagement process, it was determined that there was a lot of hardscape there, and the community wanted to break up kind of the feel of all of that asphalt in that lower section and to add some additional color. So the team worked with Rocky Smith as a teacher at the high school. And, he's an art teacher and design teacher as well, and worked with them on trying to come up with some options and what the design could be and what it could look like. We received some decent proposals from the youth in our community, and we'll be using those as kind of a base point to further the conversation. So at some point in the next month or two, we will be having a public engagement process to look at the court design, what it could be as a general community, and then again, decide what a final court design could and should look like once we move forward to construction. So just want to keep you in the loop on that. We will hopefully, once we receive the construction documents, we'll be trying to put it out to bid as soon as possible. There's not a lot of groundwork that needs to happen, and it's something that could, am I still there? Something that could happen during the wet season because there's not a lot of groundwork. So we're hopeful that we can get this project moving forward. If not, if the bids don't come back right, or if the conditions aren't what they should be, we will rebid it sometime in the spring.
Okay. Any questions or comments regarding this topic? Okay. All right, moving on to item 6I, general business, other general business.
I had a couple of items, one of which is on August 22nd is our volunteer rec party, our recognition party for all of our hardworking volunteers in the city, of which you are 9 of our hardworking volunteers. And so we'd like to invite you to officially invite you to our volunteer recognition party. So I'm going to hand out some invitations, which provides you with free meal and free parking at the event. If parking is first come, first served though, so you probably will have to show up a little early if you're wanting one of the parking spots. Otherwise, again, we have free parking along Washington Street, as well as a couple of lots nearby.
It's the Johnny Limbo night. You better park the night before.
Yeah, quite popular, but these are a lot of fun.
Yes.
They are.
So I want to thank you all for your dedication and your long meeting and talking in a dark room when we have beautiful sunshine outside. But I want to make sure that you have an opportunity to come join us on the Johnny Limbo and Lugnuts concert event. And then the other item that I have is the survey at the promenade. So we have, as we discussed recently as a group, we're conducting a topographic and boundary survey at the promenade. We have not received that document back from the firm, but when we do, we'll be providing it, presenting it to this group and talking about next steps.
A question? Are there other parks that we're going to have surveyed that you're unclear of as far as boundaries, so that I assume this will all be put into an agenda item at some future date to bring the park master plan to completion in regards to charter parks?
Yeah, so we'll be bringing the promenade forward at some point to be adopted. The Ermitinger House still has some survey work that needs to happen. And I'm trying to think if we had any other ones. Those are the two that stick out in my mind. that needed to have additional work completed. But yeah, we had a couple that were hanging still. But all the other parks have been adopted as charter parks. And we also have some additional, so like the Claremont Way property that we purchased, which has not been designated as a park by ordinance, which is opportunity for us to do that.
Is Atkinson Park and Buena Vista House also, I know that's a charter park already, but the Buena Vista House, is there any doubt on its properties on the boundary?
No, it's within the footprint of the park. So,
And we've got all the original deeds.
correct.
Yeah, the problem with the promenade is you've got the hand-drawn maps is basically what tells you what the
Yeah.
promenade was, and it's changed over time. Everything else, they had the deeds and property descriptions, but it was interesting when they hit the point that, we really don't know what and where. So I guess you could get every deed along the promenade. I have a reflection, a question or something on the Parks report this month. Several years ago, we used to get, I think it was $20,000 from the county for the city to use for tourism purposes. And we had a committee, kind of a volunteer committee that distributed those funds.
Oh, okay.
And that's being handled differently now. But one summer, we gave money to the police department to have a reserve officer on the promenade from like 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. and got really good feedback over the effectiveness of that. And reading about the amount of trash that they're hauling out of there, I don't know if I think the money is now in economic development, but it might be worth opening a conversation if some of that money is possibly available for that purpose again.
There's, so the transient tax, tourism funds, there's two different pots. So the county does receive tourism transient tax funds. The city does as well. The city funds that we receive have been sitting with economic development in a fund and have been kind of accumulating. They haven't really spent it. They're hiring right now in the hiring process for a tourism coordinator position, which will pay for, those funds will pay for that position moving forward, in addition to additional funds that that coordinator position will help to determine process using our tourism plan. The county tourism funds, economic development, does a review. They sit on a review committee with the county, and then the county expends those funds. So I don't believe we actually hold them, but I believe economic development helps to read through application processes. But those funds do still get doled out to the community.
Yeah, because I think that's one of the best uses we ever made of that.
Yeah, no, and that's a good, we've had conversations. I know that Jeff asked if we could have a future conversation around the misuse of the parks and vandalism and what we're seeing. Jonathan's out this week, but hopefully I'll be able to have him at the September meeting to talk a little bit more about the misuse and the time that we dedicate to taking care of those things, which is substantial.
I can tell by your report.
Yeah.
It's getting longer.
Yeah.
Okay, it was an observation on reading that.
And we do have one public comment. Mr. O'Brien.
Pardon me. Tom O'Brien, Oregon City. Marguerite, my wife, and I both would like to thank the current members as well as past members of PRAC, as well as Phil, for all of the hard work and support that you've given toward the obtaining of the grants for Filbert Run Park. We really recognize that you've put a lot of effort into supporting us, and so we thank you for that. Two other issues. I'm addressing this now because I didn't know where it was on the agenda. I thought it was under other things. You have on your goals in Goal 4, complete the formal naming process. Just a comment. We have an officer who gave his life for the citizens of this city. And I would suggest that if it's not already in there, that Officer Libke be one of the candidates to be voted upon. I just feel very strongly that someone who gives his life in its prime deserves such a naming. Third item, while you all had a lengthy discussion with many great ideas regarding the memorial benches, one of you came a little bit close to understanding the needs of people in my age group and above, and that's Alicia. She mentioned that the benches at Chapin are not something that someone my age would even have an interest in trying to sit on. Certain of us like chairs such as we have out here in the audience that give good back support. And when we completed the planning process for Filbert Run Park, I personally went around the city to a number of parks and places where benches existed. And I sat on them and I tried them out. The item that was neglected or overlooked in all of your conversation was comfort.
Details.
I would invite you to sit on the bench out here in the corner of the parking lot. Of all the benches that I sat on, it is the one that I would return to time and time again because of its comfort factor. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, sir.
Is it okay to, I guess, ask a question about that?
Yeah.
Public input? And this might help Mr. O'Brien as well, but when we were looking at Tyrell Woods Memorial Park, the police department actually asked us not to consider Officer Libke as one of the candidates for naming because they are naming the new police station after him. So they will have his name on it. I assume they're going to request or would want the same thing going forward.
That's my understanding, yeah.
So
Yeah, that
he
is
does
correct.
have a building
Official.
named after him, which is the police department coming up. So, but otherwise a great candidate.
Okay, anything else?
Not on my end.
All right. We are at member reports. And let's start on my left this time.
Uh-oh.
Mr. Jeff.
Well, actually, nothing to report, but I'm glad summer's here.
I think you do have something to report.
I do.
The tour.
Oh,
Yeah, the Falls Tour.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you for reminding me.
Yeah.
I went on the second Willamette Falls tour for me, first for some of the others. And be honest with you, I just can't get enough of being down there. It's such an interesting place to be. And I just love the old buildings, even though they're derelict in many ways and falling down in other ways. But it's just such a fascinating place to roam around in, and then to learn more about the history, going all the way back to the Indian occupation and milling and things like that. It really, it's just a super place, I think, that we have an opportunity for. And you know, one of the things that kind of fascinates me about this era that we're living in, I saw this down in Arizona, I see this up here in Oregon, is cities reclaiming their waterfronts. Vancouver is doing something with their waterfront. And, I think that's such an important and noble process for a city, because that's really your heartbeat. I remember in Peoria, we called it the river, the new river. It was actually a dry riverbed. but it was full of trees, and our flood control district wanted to come down and take out all the trees, so it would be more of a flood control channel. And we absolutely had a hissy fit, beginning with myself, because we felt that that was the gateway to the city. And I was so encouraged when the city council stood up to the flood control district and said, no, we're not taking down those trees. It's important to us. And so when I see projects like this for Oregon City, I just think that generations to come are really going to thank the city for the efforts that they put into this right now, because it's going to be a wonderful amenity for the citizens and for the city. So whenever you have another tour, I'll sign up.
Thanks, Jeff. Alicia?
Awesome. After the last meeting, there was so much talk about Sportcraft Landing, and I'm like, I have no idea. So other than the tour Phil had, we had driven by it. So I actually dragged my family, took a little bit of Dairy Queen, dragged my family down there, got out of the car, walked down to where the kayak rentals and everything. And then actually this past weekend, took kayaks out with a friend, and we went on, not Sportcraft, but we walked through whatever that other dock is right by there. The long ramp that goes down by the bathrooms.
Oh, yeah.
Johnstorm.
Yeah, there we go. And then actually kayak to the falls, which I had never done before. And I've done the tour once before. So it was fascinating then to see it from, down up. Yeah. So yeah, that was my little field trip.
Sounds like
Great.
fun.
Yeah, it was great.
Thank you. Karen?
Nothing.
Okay. I know you've been busy with other things. All right. Mr. Cook, Chris?
Just a little bit of information. I'm not sure if anybody heard, but PGE's held a couple open houses in West Lynn to discuss the waterfront redevelopment that's going on that side. Obviously, PGE owns property on both sides of the river down here. But their study and results are actually out there on PGE's website, portlandgeneral.com. It's quite extensive. It's very interesting. There's all the public input that they gathered, along with a lot of studies that they've done. So if you have a chance, I'd recommend go out and look at it.
That's great.
Yeah, great, thanks. Yeah, well. Okay, Derek?
I'll start off with, I did make it to the Caulfield Neighborhood Association meeting. I think I mentioned that, I think it was after our last meeting. Very well attended, very, mainly based on the Beaver Creek project. A lot of interest, obviously, in that. We did have the police officer that deals with the homeless come and have a very good discussion on that. I can't recall his name, but
Okay.
yeah. So that was very interesting. And then they also had a real estate and developer come in and talk about the housing market in Oregon City. And and actually that was pretty interesting also. Kind of segues into my adventures in the parks. I've gone around, I've been in most of them around here. One thing I wanted to bring up, and it goes hand in hand with Beaver Creek, and I know this is way out there, time frame, but I don't know if anybody's been to Salmon Creek up in Vancouver. Have you known that park? Off of the softball fields, which is where I spent the last 2 months. Essentially, if we ever get to the point where we can have a park in that Beaver Creek development project, I know we don't have the land and whatnot, but if it could, it's generally in the same form as that Salmon Creek Park, which is just insanely really neat. 3 miles of just river, and obviously the dynamic is not there for what we have, but it would be neat to emulate that to a smaller scale. I know it could be a year or 10 years down the road, but something I was thinking about is really enjoyed that. And then looking at the reports, I know we don't need to add in the goals, but at some point we need to figure out, maybe as a goal, as a group, how to make these our parks safer and less destructive. I don't know how that I'm sure it's been brought up before, but we don't have that as a goal, but maybe that is something we need to look at. I think Karen mentioned the officer, which that's what reminded me of, is like, that's what we kind of need, because as I read through those, it's so discouraging seeing the vandalism and whatnot. And is that something that we can look at as a group here, as a park record? That's right. There we go. I'm done.
Okay, thanks. Troy?
I have nothing, thank you.
Okay. Bill?
We have volunteer groups on Promenade that meet on the second Saturday of every month, at least through most of the pleasant months, not in December and January. But, and there's also as a benefit, there was a volunteer group at Buena Vista House at Atkinson Park doing some cleanup. I was not able to attend, but that's one of the advocacy groups that we need to think about encouraging our neighborhoods, because I know that our maintenance crews could use any additional help, whether it's raking limbs, leaves, spreading mulch, even working on graffiti, volunteering to remove graffiti if it's given the proper utensils from the staff. But I think a lot of that is something that, if we're visiting other neighborhood associations, certainly that would be at the top of my list of how they can help to improve the parks, not only in their own community, but of course in the city.
Thank you. Anything else?
That's it.
Okay. As far as myself, I actually was there last weekend at the Buena Vista House, and we had one of the, what would you call it, the 20-yard dumpster? Mm-hmm. Full. Easily. Wow. Easily. There was so much raking, but you know what? It's a lot of fun, and actually in Park Place, where tentatively the neighborhood association is looking at a date in September for a neighborhood cleanup event, similar to this. You're all invited. Once we get to that point and I have a firm date, speak with the neighborhood association a little bit further, and then with Phil and Jonathan to announce that. We had talked just a little bit about vandalism, and what I do notice, the park hosts, I think they make a difference. It would be, I know certainly in Park Place Park, it's having that presence. I think that's important. Other things I've been busy with, the Memorial Day event at Mountain View Cemetery. Thanks to everyone who put that on, Jonathan and his team, and Karen, everyone else that's involved. My parents are interred at a military cemetery back in the Midwest. So it was nice for me to be able to go and attend a ceremony in their honor, a way to honor them remotely. I also was at the Falls Tour. I agree with you, Jeff, that you can't get enough of it. And I also attended the first concert in the park. 5,000 people showed up.
It was amazing.
It was packed, but it was a lot of fun. And that was with Oregon City Parks Foundation. So we had a tent. Didn't make a lot of money, but we were there and handing out brochures and answering questions. So OCPF has been busy over the summer.
Okay.
Keeping active. In fact, they're there tonight.
Oh, excellent.
So that's all I have.
And now that Lisa said that, I had another thank you to the staff. When the Memorial Day event was over, they'd made arrangements for the chaplain to dedicate a headstone that they had ordered of a young man who had served for 2 years after World War I, came to Oregon City, drowned, and was buried by the American Legion, who never had provided him a headstone. And so when I found out his backstory, staff worked on ordering a headstone, had it installed, and the chaplain did a beautiful job dedicating it. So that was another thank you very much to staff.
Yeah, great job. Okay. Staff reports, item 8.
The rec report we sent out via email. PrAC bylaws, just to update. The City Commission approved them in June, so we have new bylaws bylaws. They've been loaded onto our website, so if you can go on and take a look at those. With that, we'll begin probably mid-August as admin staff will begin showing up at the school, reaching out to the high school and reaching out to staff there to start to get information out about the teen position for PrAC. So we'll start doing social media and doing some outreach on that as well. And then Sportcraft Landing, on the last City Commission meeting, they approved the adoption of a new 15-year lease with Sportcraft on a portion of the waterway lease there. So signing off on that, and we'll be entering into a new sublease with Sportcraft as we are the leaseholder for that waterway lease as the city. I did have one other next scheduled meeting item / staff report item. In conversations with our planning department, they're requesting that we hold a meeting at some point around when we would typically hold our meeting in August, and to look at the Beaver Creek concept plan area as it relates to parks. And so I'm asking if the 22nd, I know, is the volunteer recognition night, and it's the last concert, and we definitely don't want to do it on that day, but if that next Thursday, the 29th, or the Thursday after that, September 5th, if either of those dates would work for your schedules, I'd be happy to communicate via email, let you look at your schedules, and maybe we can get a date that works for the majority of us. But it's very important as it relates to the Beaver Creek concept plan area and what we want that area to really look like as far as parks are concerned. So hopefully we can get a date that works. I'm sure we can also find many other items to talk about, or we could keep it a short and sweet meeting to your discretion. So that's it as far as future items / staff report on my end.
So that was last Thursday of August, or the first Thursday in September?
Correct.
Which is Labor Day weekend.
Yeah, and we can look at other dates as well, as if you would like. Just know that we typically meet on Thursdays, and I think the commission chambers are typically open on Thursdays as well.
Okay, so maybe a survey?
Yeah, so I can send an email out. Just wanted to make sure that that you're starting to think about it, and hopefully you can find a date that works for the majority of us.
Okay, great. Circling back to item 9, the future agenda items, shall we put vandalism and problem solving in that regard on? That'd be great. Thanks, Jeff, for the suggestion. Any other items that, Bill?
Well, we had a canceled meeting in June, and it was full of agenda items. I'm kind of wondering, are we needing to get through any of those that you didn't have time to do tonight, that we maybe could fit in on that extra meeting perhaps in August?
A lot of those items we did cover tonight. The Memorial Bench program was one of the major ones that is not kind of an ongoing update of other work that we're doing. I can go back and look and see if there's any other agenda items that are still hanging out there. I have an ongoing list of things that have been requested by the group.
The only other thing I would say is just reaffirm that we want to bring a proposed format for the PrAC goals.
Yep, let's put that down. Okay, and that'll be Chris and Troy. Okay, any other items, ideas, suggestions for future agenda items?
So you probably won't have Clackamas Park as an agenda item for the end of August, then, or will there be some issues there that you want to?
That would be a separate, so I envision that as being a joint PrAC City Commission meeting, so it'll kind of depend on when we can get on the agenda of the City Commission as well. But that'll be a combined meeting at some point on a Wednesday.
But we're not talking about moving.
I was thinking about that, I had that in my
vehicle.
mind.
Maybe that's
Yeah.
something that we could have a consensus here to recommend an appointment. I know that probably has to do with perhaps having a a boat ramp put in or not, but it seems like that's a huge component of what we're trying to get through. And I know we had our walking tour and has some ideas about what our group might feel where it could be placed or should be placed, or if we're keeping it at all.
And if we can definitely have that conversation, either at that meeting or leading up to. I would say that in working with the consultant, it makes the most sense to move the RV park from its current location, and what we'll most likely be seeing on a conceptual, this is what the park could look like plan, will include the RV park across the street in what is currently the overflow parking lot next to the McDonald's, which would allow us to be
Where it'll
open
actually
year
stay
round.
dry.
Stay dry, it's above the high water mark. Would allow us to do permanent connections for utilities to make improvements that we know won't get washed out every year. It has a lot of opportunities there that we wouldn't have in its current location.
Are you envisioning about the same amount of capacity in that area that you're talking about moving to?
It might have a little bit more capacity possibly at the new location. They're about the same size, but if we could do some reorganizing of it to add a little bit of capacity, but it would be roughly the same count. Might be an extra slip or two.
That's also would be another reason to look at not replacing the boat ramp,
Right.
because that's used for the overflow parking during fishing season. That it's packed during fishing season. Now I don't want to prolong things, but I'm on track with Bill. I've launched from that ramp and from Sportcraft and from Mildrum Bar. I hate that one. And it's useless most of the summer because, you got this much water above the rocks. Now that it has been closed, how much negative feedback have we gotten over it not being open?
It's currently open.
Oh, it is still open? Okay.
Yeah.
Do we know what the use of it, how heavily it's used up when it's not salmon season?
Can we save this for another agenda, for another
Okay,
meeting?
yes, I'm doing it, so I stopped.
I think the conversation is a bit premature until we hear more from the consultant. And get that work done.
And we can, we can definitely have that further conversation. Yep.
Okay,
Because I'm with him.
okay. Can we put on future agenda items, the dog park discussion and forming a committee, assigning a committee?
Yes, please.
Okay.
It's been there forever.
Yeah. Now that we have a new card.
Want to check that off?
All right, let's do it. Get it done.
It's been at least 4 months.
Yeah, get her done. Okay, any other questions, comments? Am I missing anything? Okay, next meeting, well, that's to be determined. We'll figure it out. That adjourns tonight's meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.